Hey everyone, my name is KryptoCal, and welcome to the final episode of FTB Skies. To finish off this series the right way, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and revisit all the progression and things that we did in this world. But before we dive into the world tour, I have a very exciting announcement to make. I am so excited to be partnering with Banana Servers to launch a brand new community server for all of you to play on. Banana Servers are dedicated to providing you a high quality and reliable server experience, which all comes at a fantastic price. Setting up your server is super easy, and they're available 24/7 to help you in case you need a little bit of help. So if you and some friends want to play FTB Skies together, a different mod pack, or even a different game altogether, then definitely go ahead and check Banana Servers out. I have an affiliate link in the description below, so definitely go check them out. So once again, thank you very much Banana Servers for your support on the channel, and I'm super excited to be launching the community server for all of you to play on. The community server will be launching soon, so if you're interested in getting involved, definitely head over to the Discord. That's where you can get access to the server and get your name on the whitelist. And you'll definitely see me there because the pack that we're playing looks super fun. And to celebrate the launch of the new community server, as well as finishing this pack, I'm going to be hosting a bit of a competition. So stick around to the end of the world tour to find out more about that. Alright, so let's dive right into the world tour. It only makes sense to start with the thing that holds the entire base, which is the main island. I really tried to make this a unique shape, but I took advantage of the builder to help create the overall outline, and then I went through and detailed with some extra materials afterwards. I also added these little spikes to kind of give the island a little more character, and to kind of provide a little more shape at the bottom, or else it would have just looked like a big giant bowl. And you may have noticed that in between the last episode and this world tour, I added this little bit of a shrubby hedge all around the island. And I think that just makes the whole island come together. I find this kind of just takes away from that hard edge that the island had before, and I think it looks really nice. And now that we're on top of the island here, what better place to start than the very first build that we did on the island, which was our sifting building. But we had all of our resources here being produced, albeit at a much slower rate than this. And it was running slower before because we didn't have access to the infinite stress units that we have over at our Create workshop. So we were running this whole thing with the water wheels that we had inside the building. So we ended up sifting all the resources that we needed here. We had gravel, we had sand, waterlogged sand, dust, netherrack, soul sand, and the crushed endstone. And this little system here provided us with all the resources that we used for the entire pack. We had a really simple setup on how we were producing resources, and it worked for the entire playthrough. And because this was the first build on the island, it kind of set the tone for what the entire palette of the rest of the island would include. Obviously we had some variety, but a lot of the key elements we ended up keeping across most of our builds. A lot of dark oak, a lot of spruce trim, and a lot of these two-tone designs that we have a lower and an upper floor. And it feels like so long ago that I built this, but I love it every time I look at it. Anyways, once we built this, we decided that it was time to upgrade our storage because at that point we were running out of the old storage unit over at the original island. And if you remember the first couple episodes of this series, you'll remember that we started off on a small little island just off the island that way, which is where we had all of our storage and all of our things were being kept over there, and it was getting really cluttered. So we decided after we built this on the island that it was time to fully move out of that little storage spot and build this. It houses all of our drawer units that we used basically for the entire playthrough, and it holds all of the drawers with all the bulk stored items in here. Now, before we had applied energistics, we were using integrated dynamics storage system, which is a really fantastic early game system, so I highly recommend going and checking out that video if you haven't already. But essentially we had a storage terminal right in the middle here, and all of these barrels were hooked up using ID, as well as all of our drawers, and that made it so we basically never ran out of storage for the entirety of the early game. Now, obviously we did upgrade our storage later down the road, but this was a fantastic early game option. And I really went for a different aesthetic for this build. Yeah, but overall super happy with how this build turned out. And it was the first time I ended up using a little bit of this polished witch hazel. And the witch hazel with the reddish tone mixed in with this scoria from Create is perfect. So once we had our storage building set up and we had the infinite resources coming in from our sifting building, I decided it was time to dive a little further into Create. And that's when we decided it was time to build a warehouse to store all of our Create mod contraptions. The palette, I kind of borrowed a little bit from each of these. I borrowed a little bit of the scoria from this building and a little bit of the color tones from the sifting building, and I think this came together really nicely. But I think my favorite part of this building is the inside. This is probably one of my favorite Create setups that I've ever made, and part of that is due to this control panel here, which let us selectively control which machines were turned on and which were turned off, as well as providing the master switch to turn the entire building off if we were not using it at all. So in here we were making our casings, we made our precision mechanisms, and then all of our mixing was happening down here, as well as our mechanical crafters. We also went ahead and installed this elevator, which let us go to this upper floor here, where I had the exact same setup with a control panel and access to a couple other setups up here, like the setup here to make plates. This was a washing setup and also a crushing wheel setup up here. And of course, all this was being powered by one large steam engine in the back here. And I absolutely love building all the create contraptions inside of this building, and I just loved the challenge of trying to fit everything in, and I think it turned out super nice. And after we got finished doing all the create stuff and getting all of our rotational power set up, it was time to move into the next age and unlock some power generation. Because up till this point, we were using some pretty janky power, it wasn't very efficient, and we were trying to charge our jetpack up, and charging our jetpack was taking an absolute eternity at this point, which is what the purpose of this building started off as. Initially, I had set up this power setup using mechanism gas burning generators. Basically, we were having the pedestals produce moss, which was crushing down into the biofuel, and we are using the biofuel as well as the oxygen here, mixing it all up back there, and then producing ethylene, which these gas burning generators were then using. And Mechanism's gas burning generators are absolutely insanely overpowered. Each one of these can produce 72,000 FE per tick. And all of them burning together, we could produce about 650,000 FE per tick, which for that point in the series was absolutely insane. So yeah, we really didn't have to increase our power production at all throughout the series until we got to the point near the end of the pack where we had to produce more antimatter, which takes an insane amount of power. We also around that time set up the hostile neural networks to start producing us some mob drops. We didn't end up having to make too many more of these because overall the amount of mob loot that we needed for this pack was pretty minimal. Some main ones that we had were spiders for string, sheep for wool, blaze for blaze rods, evokers for the emeralds. The ender dragon of course produced us the dragon eggs and the dragon's breath. And finally, the Wither, of course, produced us infinite nether stars. Now, up until this point, we were just getting ourselves established in the world. We really hadn't bothered taking a look at any of the quests or starting to follow any of the quest progression because, frankly, we just had to get things set up first. But it was at this point that I decided to take a look, and we realized that we needed about 100 buckets of honey from the Productive Bees mod. So we actually spent an episode breeding bees, getting them all put together in the advanced hives, and creating this lovely little building behind me for them to live in. And I went through the build process on how I decided to design this actually live in the episode. So if you're interested in seeing the design process for this build and what I was thinking while I was building it, you can go ahead and check it out. It's episode 9 of this series. And after we finished with this building and we had honey coming in, we were looking at our questline and realized that it was time to start getting into some more automation, because automation and auto crafting make everything so much easier in these questing mod packs. And that's when we decided to revisit this building, which was at one point just our power building, and we wanted to convert this into a hub for our brand new storage system. And we decided to try using applied energistics for this pack, which I have to say was a ton of fun. And even though I would consider applied energistics a little more complicated than refined storage, I found it was so much fun getting to learn the ins and outs of applied energistics and getting to try out a bunch of new stuff that I hadn't tried before. So we went ahead and put a roof on this building, and we put a second floor up there to house our applied energistics network. In the upstairs of this building is where we housed our applied energistics controller, which was definitely overkill for what we ended up using for this pack, but I just thought it was more of a centerpiece and more of a design choice than anything else. We started off with this controller right here, as well as one of these towers of crafters to set up some basic auto crafting. And at this point, we were just sending out one of these dense cables all the way to the middle of the island, and we were using that to add automation capacity to all of our buildings. But that came with a bit of a hiccup when it came to controlling our channels and how they were managed around the island. So later on, I ended up swapping out to the quantum link chamber here, and I reconfigured all of these P2P tunnels to properly send our channels around. And the quantum link chamber here is connected to one underground at our main storage building over there. So that's how I ended up sending all of the channels that we would need from here all the way to the rest of the island. And if we come underground using the elevator here, we have all of our inscribers that we were using to automate applied energistics stuff right down here. and everything was basically set to autocraft, so we had all of this ready to go, which was absolutely huge when we started to get into autocrafting. We also went ahead and set up these resource generation pedestals for pretty much every single material that we could in the game. And this was very easy to automate down here just by using some drawers here with some puller upgrades pulling from the top here. So we had effectively all of these drawers infinitely producing us resources, and they were all hooked into one controller right down here, which was hooked directly into our applied energistic system. And next up, as we leave this building and hang a left, we come to probably one of my favorite builds of this entire series, which was our Britannia building. And I really tried to push my creativity for this building. Yeah, this is definitely one of the most unique builds I have on the island here, and I decided to try and resemble the top of the building after the Spore Blossom face, which I think turned out pretty well. But inside here is where all the magic happened. This is where we had our initial mana generation setup. Now, before we had access to infinite mana, we just had a small automation setup that was dropping coal blocks for endo flames to burn and produce mana with. We also got to try out these floating energizeras, which were basically a botanic additions flower that produces mana by using energy. And we were transferring all of the mana out of these pools into a couple pools over here. And this is where we had the portal to Elfheim, where we were doing all of our elven trading. We had the agglomeratio plate, which used to be the other one, but now we have the Gaia agglomeration plate. And this is where we were doing all of our automation for Terra Steel and also a couple other materials. And finally over here, this is our setup to automate runes. And we had every single rune available on autocrafting. And this was an absolute game changer because we didn't have to go ahead and manually craft every single rune that we needed. We could go ahead and just put the recipe in and let it do its thing automatically. And most of the automation for this actually ends up happening underground, so it's kind of nice that we get to hide it all away. So after automating all the stuff from Britannia that we were going to need, we then went ahead and crafted up some Gaia pylons and fought the Gaia Guardian, because we needed to get the Gaia Spirit ingots, because this is required for some quests and such. But we also had to get the Gaia Spirits to go ahead and craft the end portal frames, which was our gateway to get to the end. And once we had enough of the end portal frames crafted up, we could go ahead, light the portal, and go and fight the dragon, which unsurprisingly was not a very eventful fight. I'm pretty sure it didn't last more than like 15 seconds. Once the dragon was defeated, we went ahead and did some end exploration. And we ended up traveling quite far in the end. We explored a sizable amount of land here, and we explored an absolute ton of end cities while we were out here because these had a ton of really, really good loot. So it was worth it for us to check out every single one that we came across. And after our end exploration, our next gateway was to get into industrial foregoing because we had to complete 100 buckets of latex, which is when we designed and built this industrial factory, complete with a sliding door. Now, when we first built this, we were basically only using this for latex production. So what we had over here was our fluid extractors, extracting all the latex out of our acacia logs. And on this side here, we had our latex processing unit, processing all that latex into the rubber to create plastic. And we also have these dissolution chambers set up here that are doing auto crafting for all of industrial foregoing. And in completing some of these quests here, we actually got 4 of these ultimate induction cells and 4 of the ultimate induction providers. Normally these are so expensive to craft, and the game basically gave us 4 of each of these for free. So after we went ahead and set up the industrial foregoing stuff and got all that running, we went and set up the induction matrix, which we used as a massive power storage for the rest of the pack. Basically, we were just sending power in and out of this, and this was going to... And I never actually ended up filling this all the way up, but at that same time, we were looking forward and wanting to craft some more advanced stuff in industrial foregoing, which involved getting some pink slime. And we got our pink slime up here using the mob slaughter factory with our spawner, which we can toggle on and off. And we use this to obtain as much pink slime and liquid meat as we needed. So at this point, we had access to a ton of materials already, and we had a good amount of industrial foregoing already automated. Our next step then was to dive further into mechanism because we had to get to the point where we were making antimatter. So to begin our quest to get antimatter, we had to first set up this automation here for fissile fuel, because fissile fuel is what we are going to be needing to burn inside of our nuclear reactor. So using this combination of the washing factory, fermentation station, and fluid sieving machine, we effectively quadrupled our uranium input and then auto-processed it using our smelting factory and enriching factory to produce the yellow cake uranium, which we then used inside of our setup here to go ahead and produce the fissile fuel. Well, that produced the uranium oxide. The rest of this is all set up using other stuff as well, but that's a whole setup in itself. So go check out that episode if you want to see more about that. And once we had our fissile fuel up and running, we turned our attention to this, the fission reactor. And I decided to make this a little bit smaller than normal because I wanted this to fit in our building here. And as you can see, if you come close here, this extends quite a bit further down. And if we come underground here, this is where all of our ports are for our water input and our fissile fuel input. And once this was all stable, we had a solid output of the nuclear waste, which we then turned into all of the materials that we needed going forward for mechanism inside of this building right here, which was our building that houses our SPS, as well as the fusion reactor up here at the top. And I decided to go ahead and use the elf glass for this build, and I think it looks really, really cool with the green terracotta, especially at night. This building here glows beautifully at nighttime. But this build was pretty basic. I just kept it pretty simple down here. There isn't a whole lot going on down here, but if we come upstairs here, we have our SPS, of course, which we were using to produce antimatter. And this is where we were producing our polonium here for our SPS, right? And this solar neutron activator. And at the very top of the building here, of course, we have our fusion reactor, which is producing us a very sizable 9.7 million FE per tick. And this setup here is producing us the liquid lithium, which we're turning into the tritium here, which is one of the two fuels that we needed for the reactor over there. And part of the pack did involve us going through the AD Astromod and getting ourselves all the different tiers of rockets and progressing to the point where we could go and fly to the moon, Venus, Mars, and also Glacio. And what we were actually using this setup over here for is producing oil, because we are currently, I believe, in a ocean biome. Yeah, we're in a cold ocean biome right here. So this is producing us oil, and the oil here is actually going right into our ME system. But I also had oil coming out here to produce the fuel in the fuel refinery, which we used to fuel our rockets. And another thing that I used the fluid laser drills for was also the ether gas. Inside of our compact machine here, we have a wither being held in place with our stasis chamber, and that is producing us the ether gas, which is also going directly into our ME system. And if we come back to our Britannia building, if we pull out our travel staff, we can see that we have two extra areas that we can explore. The elemental craft area up here and the occultism area underground. So let's first start at elemental craft. Up here we have all of our automations that we needed for elemental craft to produce us the pure crystals. And this was a huge upgrade, having the creative element containers instead of having to produce it ourselves. And this quest right here was actually what gave us those creative containers. So waiting until I had completed that quest line to start setting automations up here was actually a really good idea. And if we come underground to occultism, this is where we set up all of the stuff that we needed to do the occultism rituals. Yeah, so what we had to do for occultism was we had to craft up a couple of things using some other rituals, but the main thing we had to do was fight the unbound Afrit, which dropped the Afrit essence, which was one of the key ingredients to finish one of the quests. Other than that, the last build that we really built on the island was over here, and this was this little Ars Nouveau setup. And the pavilion here housed our enchanting apparatus, as well as this creative source jar, which we got from a quest, which made crafting everything here very straightforward. So everything we've basically done up to this point has led us up to this moment, which is the moment that we, sadly, end the pack. We accomplished all of our goals. We obtained the Cheaty storage disk, the ultimate achievement in the pack. So I can say that without a doubt, this has been a super successful and amazing pack to play through. And I really hope you had fun watching this series. I had a ton of fun making it, and I really hope you had fun playing this pack for yourself. And to thank all of you for coming along this journey with me, I want to run a little contest. As of right now, when this video gets released, I will have the world download for this world on my Discord. And the contest is, I'm going to go ahead and hide this Cheaty storage disk somewhere on this island, in some sort of container. Now, don't worry, it won't be hiding in the dirt somewhere randomly. It'll be in a container that's already placed in the world somewhere. Your goal as the viewer is to go ahead and download the world download and go and find where I've hidden the Cheaty storage disk. If you're the first person to message me the exact location of where the Cheaty storage disk is hiding, I'll be giving away a $10 Steam gift card to whoever is the first person to tell me the location of the disk. If for some reason the Steam gift card doesn't work out or something, we can figure out a different way to get you that prize, but I think that'll just be a fun little challenge to see who's the first person to find where it's hiding. It could be in a barrel, it could be in a chest, who knows where it could be. While you're over on the Discord getting your world download, be sure to get yourself whitelisted for the community server. It's going to be a ton of fun. We're playing the Steampunk LPS mod pack, and it looks like it's going to be an absolute blast. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to wrap things up right here. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, the link for the Discord is in the description down below. But that's it for me, everybody. I hope you all have a good one, and I will catch you in the next mod pack. Bye!